Okay, chapter 51 just blew my mind. We finally got the details on making sugar from those sweet stalks. MC's knowledge seems limitless. Plus, the strategic planning is off the charts. 3 new commanderies, including one near the newly discovered the Ukamiya rubber trees. Erasers and wheels, yes please. But then the perspective shifted to Niu Wei, and wow. Following his journey to find the Han, hearing about their society, currency, and the MC's godlike reputation through the eyes of migrating tribes, it gave such incredible depth to the world building. You really feel the Han tribe's meteoric rise, and why outsiders are both awed and wary. That arrival scene at Liuyang, pure tension. The alarm drums beating, Niu Wei's group mistaken for enemies. Talk about a cliffhanger. He came seeking knowledge and peace, but will this disastrous first impression lead to conflict instead? Okay, here is the translation of the provided Chinese novel excerpt into fluent, idiomatic English, adhering strictly to the specified guidelines. Having given his final instructions, Niu Wei rode forward alone on his horse, continuing towards the city under the watchful eyes of everyone on the wall. When he was just over 100 meters from the city, under the watch of numerous sentries and Da Shu, he tossed away his bow and arrows. When he reached 50 or 60 meters, he dropped his sword as well, indicating he carried no weapons, bore no ill will, and hoped they would grant him an opportunity to speak. Da Shu had been defending Weishan Commandery for 2 years now and was quite experienced. He naturally understood Niu Wei's intentions. However, during wartime, the city gates couldn't simply be opened, so he ordered a basket lowered, instructing Niu Wei to get in so they could pull him up. Niu Wei was very cooperative and soon reached the top of the wall. He quickly offered a respectful greeting in the Xin Tribe's language. However, the Han tribe members, seeing that Niu Wei's group had arrived on horseback, assumed they were a nomadic tribe from the grasslands. Consequently, they summoned a plainsman, one who had previously joined the Han tribe and was now in charge of animal husbandry in Weishan Commandery, to serve as an interpreter. The translator first conversed with Niu Wei in the language of the plains, then translated into the Han language for Da Shu, enabling communication between them. Lord Administrator, the translator relayed to Da Shu. He's not a plainsman. He says he's an elder of the Xin tribe, responsible for external trade. He wishes to meet our chieftain, firstly, to discuss trade on the grasslands, and secondly, to conduct some business with our Han tribe. He says the mounted troop outside are his men, and the cattle and sheep they brought are all intended as gifts for us. Oh? An elder of the Xin tribe? In charge of external trade, here to discuss grassland trade and wanting to trade with our Han tribe? Da Shu said with surprise, clearly not expecting the visitor to be such an important figure from the Xin tribe. Ask him what sort of trade he proposes. The chieftain is very busy and might not be able to see him. The translator conferred with Niu Wei once more, then turned back to Da Shu. Lord Administrator, he says he wants to buy the same goods our caravans sell to the plains tribes: iron pots, ironware, cloth, horse carts, ox carts, all of it. They can pay with cattle, horses, sheep, and pelts. They can offer whatever the plains tribes offer, and certainly no less. So the Xin tribe still desires our vehicles? Da Shu thought. Even the previous conflict didn't deter them? It makes sense. Carts are incredibly useful, offering so much convenience. If I were a Xin tribe elder, I'd definitely try everything to get my hands on them. Not just the carts, but the technology to build them. Is that what they're truly after? The technology. Da Shu instantly grasped the key point. However, the final decision on how to handle this rested with the chieftain. The priority now was to keep these people settled and inform the leader. Having decided on this course of action, Da Shu immediately put on a smiling face. Tell him, he instructed the translator, that this isn't out of the question. However, I am not the Han tribe's chieftain, and this matter requires his approval. They may stay here for the time being, but they must not wander freely. The chieftain is currently elsewhere. We must send word to him, and it may take half a month for him to arrive. If they wish to discuss this further, they need to accept our arrangements and wait. Da Shu's statement contained both truth and falsehood. It was true he needed to inform the chieftain, but the time frame was exaggerated. You were, at that moment, in the newly established Weishan Commandery north of 8 Treasures Mountain, planning its construction alongside Yunji. A message via messenger eagle would reach you in half an hour at most. Were you to set out immediately, you could arrive by the next day, but Da Shu intentionally cited half a month to create a buffer, giving you ample time to consider and formulate the most advantageous response for the Han tribe. It also served to keep Niu Wei and his men contained, essentially placing them under house arrest and restricting their freedom. After all, who knew if they had already managed to steal Han technology? What if they escaped with it? Niu Wei, upon hearing Da Shu's response, suspected nothing. A half-month turnaround time for sending a message and awaiting an arrival seemed reasonable, similar to how things worked in his own Xin Tribe. He was unaware, of course, that the Han tribe had faster communication methods, nor did he know the chieftain's current location. He even felt a touch impressed. The Han tribe's territory must be vast, he thought. Such a large settlement, and it's not even where their chieftain usually resides. They're bigger than I imagined. Eager to secure the chance to negotiate, Niu Wei showed his goodwill by agreeing to abide by Da Shu's arrangements. However, Da Shu didn't house them within the city walls. Instead, he dispatched a contingent to accompany Niu Wei back outside. There, Niu Wei's men were ordered to dismount and surrender their weapons, effectively stripping them of mobility and the capacity to resist. Da Shu then cleared out a camp, usually designated for temporary workers from outside tribes, and moved the Xin delegation in. This temporary camp consisted of sheds and adobe huts. It had 2 wells and 2 communal latrines, surrounded by wooden fences and spiked barricades. Wooden watchtowers stood at each corner, now fully manned by Han tribe warriors. The Xin tribe members were forbidden to leave the camp unless they had specific business, for which they had to request someone to inform Da Shu. Their cattle and sheep were taken as the promised gifts for the Han tribe. Their more than 200 horses were temporarily impounded. They were allowed to keep their personal supplies and provisions, but after the long journey and having shared food with the guiding tribe, little grain remained. Niu Wei requested provisions. Da Shu replied that the Han tribe couldn't provide food for nothing. They would have to trade for it. As the only assets of value Da Shu saw were their impounded horses, he agreed to supply food, with the cost deducted from the horses. The longer their stay, the fewer horses they would eventually get back. Though keenly aware they were being exploited, Niu Wei felt powerless. He was under their roof and had to bow to circumstance. He had no choice but to accept Da Shu's conditions. He pleaded for the Han chieftain to be notified quickly, suggesting that if the chieftain couldn't come, they could be taken to him. Niu Wei desperately needed to conserve time for the return journey. Otherwise, they might depart without a single horse, facing a trek home that could take years on foot. Having settled the arrangements for the Xin Tribe delegation, Da Shu sent out cavalry patrols to scout the vicinity once more. Confirming no hidden Xin tribesmen or other enemies were present, he lifted the alert, allowing everyone to return to their regular tasks. At the same time, Da Shu addressed the matter of the external tribes wishing to join the Han tribe, particularly the group that had guided Niu Wei. He accepted their applications but remained wary and suspicious. Who could say if Xin tribe spies lurked among them? The final arrangement was that while these newcomers were granted official Han tribe resident status, they were not assigned to any city. Instead, they were dispersed among several newly constructed villages. These villages were situated outside the main towns. The newcomers received allocations of farmland and homestead plots. Housing was constructed uniformly, and fields were worked collectively. But ultimately, they were just villages, cut off from the Han tribe's advanced technologies. Daily life involved simple farming, digging irrigation ditches, and the like. Even if spies were concealed among them, they couldn't access any advanced technical secrets. Simultaneously, Da Shu had them monitored to watch for any suspicious behavior. The tribe that had guided the Xin had no objections to these arrangements. They had sought refuge for a stable life, and having homes and land to farm was sufficient for their needs. Meanwhile, in Weishan Commandery, the atmosphere was one of feverish activity. 300 slaves, each with their big toes amputated, had arrived and were now building the commandery's city walls under the overseer's whips. Grain shipments from Liuyang Commandery had arrived by boat, supplying provisions for the slaves and the initial group of settlers in Weishan. Over 1,000 members of the Ling tribe had also moved in, keeping the new settlement from feeling deserted. While you spent these days planning the city's districts, Yunji had been busy as well, leading his people through the Great Marsh to connect with the 20-odd tribes residing on the Lake Islands. These tribes harbored little resistance toward joining the Han. Firstly, their main point of contact was the familiar Ling tribe chief, Yunji. Secondly, the Han tribe's standard of living was demonstrably superior, and joining offered access to the conveniences of their technology. Furthermore, the chiefs of these lake tribes typically visited Weishan Commandery first to assess the conditions for themselves. After inspecting the environment and witnessing the reality, and with Yunji's encouragement, nearly all agreed to join. The process was advancing smoothly. The allure of a higher living standard was one reason. Their increasingly cramped islands were another. Some islands were quite small, yet had to sustain populations of several hundred, leaving virtually no space for movement or activities, a stifling existence. This problem was bound to intensify with population growth. So many tribes had already contemplated relocating to the mainland themselves. Just as Da Shu was dealing with Niu Wei back in Liuyang, you were not idle in Weishan either. At that very moment, introduced by Yunji, you were welcoming another Lake Island tribe into the fold. Had it been just any minor tribe, you might have paid little attention, viewing them merely as another statistic on the population reports. This tribe, however, was unique. Leveraging their marsh environment, they had long ago mastered the cultivation of crops like rice and sorghum. Through some fortunate happenstance, they had also developed a method for fermenting leftover cooked rice into wine. A tribe capable of brewing wine. That was what sparked your interest. Even though it was just a basic low-alcohol rice wine, the discovery delighted you. You knew, of course, that modern high-proof liquors rely on distillation, but knowing the principle is one thing, and practical application is another entirely. With this existing foundation, improvements could be made, accelerating the development of the Han tribe's own brewing industry. Yunji had previously told you about this tribe that knew how to make wine. Because they had mastered crop cultivation long ago, and because there weren't many dangerous beasts in the Great Marsh, the tribe was quite populous, having grown to over 500 members. This limitation was also due to the specifics of their environment. Otherwise, their numbers might have been even greater. As with previous tribes, this one had no name of its own. You assigned names based on their distinguishing features. This tribe was no exception. You named them the Jiu Tribe, the Wine Tribe. Their clan name became Jiu as well. Whether such a surname existed in your original world was irrelevant. It certainly existed here now. Furthermore, unlike tribes reliant on gathering and hunting, the leader of an agricultural tribe didn't need physical prowess, but rather depended more on farming experience. Consequently, the Jiu Tribe had only one chief, an elderly man with graying hair named Jiu Wei. Jiu Wei lived up to his name. He followed behind Yunji, supported by his own tribe's people, not because he was physically frail, but because he was drunk. You yourself felt speechless. Such a momentous occasion, his entire tribe joining another, and he shows up intoxicated. Was he really that nonchalant? When the group arrived before you, what immediately caught your attention was Jiu Wei's brewer's nose, ruddy, and extremely conspicuous. This fellow shouldn't be called Jiu Wei, wine elder, you thought. He should be Jiu Gui, wine drunkard. His dark skin was wrinkled, his body gaunt, though his belly was surprisingly large. A mass of shoulder-length gray hair drifted in the breeze, unadorned by any headwear. Around his waist was wrapped a piece of undyed hemp cloth, likely acquired from the Ling tribe, and of course, slung over his shoulder and swinging back and forth was a gleaming, oily-looking yellow bamboo tube. Presumably, you guessed, a flask for wine. Jiu Weng's tribespeople were similarly dressed. Since it was summer, most wore only simple wraps of hemp cloth, likely originating from the Han tribe. However, they hadn't yet learned tailoring, so they simply draped the cloth like animal hides, looking quite cool and comfortable. Some children were even entirely naked. Han chieftain, Jiu Weng slurred, supported before you, offering a tipsy attempt at a formal bow. We, the Jiu Tribe, are willing to join the Han tribe and offer the method of making wine. His pronunciation of the Han language was poor. Yunji must have just taught him the phrase. You simply nodded, spoke a few words of welcome, and encouraged them to work hard in the future. Naturally, Yunji translated your words. The old man was indeed quite drunk. After this ritual of allegiance was completed, you had someone escort him to rest. The task of communicating further with the Jiu tribespeople was handed over to Yunji and Jiu Weng's eldest son. This son was a middle-aged man, likely in his 30s. In truth, he was the one you valued most, as Jiu Weng himself no longer personally brewed. The winemaking was now entirely his eldest son's responsibility. Chieftain, this is the wine our tribe brews ourselves. Please, Chieftain, have a taste, said Jiu Weng's eldest son, Jiu Feng. He had followed you into a temporarily erected wooden shed and now presented his tribe's wine. On the square table inside sat several blue and white porcelain tea bowls. Jiu Feng uncorked a large bamboo tube stoppered with wood and poured out their rice wine. It was a purely naturally fermented wine, quite murky and milky white, resembling thin rice porridge, which, in essence, it was. Rice porridge containing alcohol, brewed from rice, even containing visible rice grains. Yunji and Jiu Feng had already tasted it in front of you. You took a sip yourself. It definitely tasted of alcohol. Being a naturally brewed, low-alcohol beverage, it drank more like a soft drink. You even found the taste somewhat familiar, especially when scooping up some of the rice grains from the bottom and chewing them. It strongly reminded you of the sweet fermented rice wine you'd drunk back home as a child. After tasting the wine and praising its flavor, you listened as Jiu Feng recounted their ancestors' legend of winemaking and the methods passed down through generations. Low-alcohol brewed beverages are nature's gift to humanity. They don't actually require sophisticated technology, often arising purely through chance natural processes. Recreating the brew simply involves replicating the conditions of that process. Jiu Feng's tale had a slightly mythical air, but stripping away the embellishments to see the core truth, it largely matched your own deductions. The natural emergence of wine relies on three essential elements. First, leftover cooked rice, the primary ingredient for brewed grain wine. Cooked grains. Second, grain that has become moldy, spoiled, or sprouted due to improper storage, providing the necessary bacteria, yeast, and saccharifying agents, the catalysts. And third, forgetfulness, or rather, time for fermentation. With these three conditions met, the story of wine's birth is fundamentally consistent across different accounts. According to Jiu Feng's narrative, their ancestors accidentally dropped moldy grain into leftover rice. At that time, they already understood that moldy food was unsafe and could cause illness or death. Thus, the contaminated leftovers could no longer be eaten. However, feeling it was too wasteful to discard immediately, they stored the bamboo tube containing the rice. When they eventually remembered it again, the contents had transformed into a liquid emitting a peculiar fragrance. Wine. You knew instantly this wasn't far from your own assumptions. No matter how the story was embellished, it had to satisfy those three conditions. Otherwise, natural wine wouldn't form. Nevertheless, the story jogged your memory, bringing back related knowledge. Alcoholic beverages can generally be categorized into two types: fruit wines and grain wines. Fruit wines are dominated by grape wine. Grain wines are numerous, made from millet, sorghum, soybeans, corn, rice, wheat, barley, and so on. Common knowledge in modern times. Setting aside fruit, grain wines further divide into low-alcohol brewed beverages and high-proof spirits made via distillation. Regardless of the type, both require microbial fermentation, which represents a shared challenge. There are generally two main methods for producing grain-based fermented beverages globally. One uses malt, sprouted grain, a technique frequently employed by Westerners, especially for low-alcohol brews like beer. The other is unique to Chinese culture. Jiu, a fermentation starter made from molded grain. The Jiu Tribe's rice wine was particularly interesting because they utilized both types of catalysts, both moldy grain and sprouted seeds, and it was the component that could be used as juku that you most desired. In your view, the source of drinking alcohol didn't matter much. In fact, the more variety, the better. However, to produce pure alcohol, distillation was the only path, which was why you placed such importance on juk. According to your memories and understanding, brewing high-proof baijiu, white liquor, specifically required juk, whereas ordinary low-alcohol brews could often be made using just malt. Regarding the origin of juk, one could attempt to cultivate it from scratch, but starting from nothing would result in highly unstable juk, as it forms naturally, and the microbial communities within wild molds vary greatly. These microorganisms profoundly impact the brewing process. Therefore, obtaining the Jiu Tribe's mature juku, refined through generations of selection, would allow the Han tribe to bypass decades of trial and error in this critical step. Its importance could not be overstated. Chieftain, this is the white grain we use to make wine, Feng explained, taking out another bamboo tube containing the substance for you to inspect. Every year during the hottest part of summer, we select some of the poorest quality grain, cook it in bamboo tubes, mix in some of the leftover white grain from the previous year, and leave it in an earthen hut for a few days. Once all the grain inside turns white, it can be used for brewing. The tube was sealed with lotus leaves and mud. As Ju Feng broke the seal, a sour smell immediately emanated from within. What met your eyes was grain completely covered in a layer of white fungal filaments. Judging by the size, it appeared to be made from rice paddy. That's right, this is. Did one look at this white grain, and you knew it was the fermentation starter the Jiu Tribe had passed down through many generations. What is juk, fermentation starter? Essentially, it's molded grain. But this white grain was different. According to Jiu Feng, they made a new batch every year, selecting fresh ingredients which were then steamed at high temperatures, clearly eliminating any existing bacteria at that stage. The conventional method would typically involve taking the cooked material out, piling it in an airtight room, and allowing bacteria to grow naturally, gradually causing mold. The drawback, however, is the inability to guarantee consistent microbial colonies with each natural inoculation, making the final quality of the wine uncontrollable. Artificial inoculation, however, avoids this problem by selecting the most suitable bacterial strains and introducing them to the cooked culture medium. One ensures the desired microbes grow. This allows for deliberate selection and cultivation of the most effective bacteria. When Jiu Feng mentioned mixing leftover starter from the previous year into the new batch, he was describing exactly this, inoculating the new material with bacteria preserved from the year before. This was, in effect, artificial inoculation. The bacterial colony they possessed had been passed down generation after generation. Perhaps they didn't fully understand the benefits of this method, but they had their own explanation for it. This is the technique passed down by our ancestors. We cannot change it randomly, or we will no longer be able to make delicious wine. While you didn't entirely agree with this sentiment, given the Jiu Tribe's rudimentary production conditions, their reasoning was understandable. However, brewing wine for the Han tribe in the future would require broader thinking and experimentation with more variations. I plan to set up a winery right here in the newly established Weishan Commandery. How about having your Jiu clan be responsible for production? You nodded, asking Jiu Feng. As long as the chieftain enjoys it and allows us to continue making wine, that's certainly no problem, Jiu Feng immediately replied after hearing Yunji's translation. Ah, don't be hasty, Yu cautioned. The wine you brewed before was good, but the variety is too limited. Of course, that's related to your tribe's resources. But the Han tribe has abundant resources, including many types of grain you haven't encountered. I need you to experiment with all of them. How about this? You don't need to worry about building the workshop. Let Yunji handle the preparations. I will provide you with all the necessary tools. Also, you must quickly learn the Han language and characters, including arithmetic and how to use scales, especially scales. They are a tool the Han tribe uses to measure weight. With them, you can portion ingredients according to strict ratios. This is crucial and will impact future large-scale wine production. For now, the focus is on experimentation. I require you to record all measurable data, including ingredient ratios and weights, fermentation conditions, and the time taken. There's no rush to produce large quantities of wine yet. Your first task is to trial produce various types of juku. Use wheat, barley, flour, sorghum, japonica rice, glutinous rice, and corn. 7 materials. Grind them, steam them, pack them into molds, pressing them firmly, and then inoculate them with the white grain microbial colony passed down by your ancestors. Let's see how many types of juk we can obtain. After the first batch, you can also try natural fermentation, or mix different materials in varying proportions before fermenting. In short, I want you to produce at least 20 to 30 different types of juk. Only then will we move on to researching the brewing itself. Huh? Chieftain, why do we need so many kinds of juk? Before Jiu Feng could respond, Yunji, who had been listening intently and had gained some basic understanding of brewing, jumped in with the question. Grain wine is ultimately for people to drink, and wine is the essence of grain. One measure of wine requires several measures of grain to produce. That's too wasteful. The Han tribe cannot afford to produce excessive amounts of wine currently. Therefore, we must experiment to find the most cost-effective and resource-efficient methods, recipes. Furthermore, I need a high-proof alcohol that can be used for medical purposes, and its production cost must be low. So, my ultimate goal is to have them develop a DAC, a potent fermentation starter, using useless materials like corn cobs, rice bran, and wheat bran as raw ingredients to brew extremely high-proof alcohol. This isn't for drinking. It's a medicine. For treating wounds, do you understand now? But isn't grain the only thing that can make wine? Can inedible corn cobs also make wine? Yunji was stunned. He had to admit the chieftain's thinking was truly unconventional, always generating novel ideas. No wonder he could create so many amazing things. But making wine from corn cobs, was that really feasible? Yunji harbored significant doubts. How? Will we know if it works if we don't try? You said with a shrug. Honestly, I don't know for sure either, but I feel it should be possible. So, let's give it a shot. Besides being used as fuel, those things don't have many other uses. If they can indeed be utilized, that would be ideal. This wasn't just a sudden whim. In modern society, corn cobs were indeed used to produce alcohol. With so many hospitals and such high demand for alcohol, relying solely on grain for production was simply unrealistic. That's why you wanted to attempt it. If low-cost alcohol could be produced without wasting food grain, it would be perfect. Jiu Feng didn't fully grasp everything, mainly because there were terms Yunji didn't know how to translate. He simply understood that the chieftain wanted him to brew many different types of wine, and even experiment with using non-grain materials. Jiu Feng also thought it sounded fantastical, but since the chieftain was providing the materials, it didn't matter much to him. Moreover, if they could genuinely create a wider variety of wines, Jiu Feng was more than willing. No member of the Jiu Tribe would be uninterested in the beverage invented by their ancestors. Now presented with an opportunity to promote and expand upon it, they would naturally do their best. With this matter concluded, Yunji led the newly joined Jiu clan members to settle into their accommodations. It was precisely at this moment that the message delivered by Eagle arrived from Weishan Commandery. After receiving the message scroll, Yunji reappeared before you. Truthfully, this was his first time witnessing the Han tribe's miraculous method of communication. It was truly swift. Chieftain, what does it say? Yunji could recognize some Han characters. The Ling tribe had maintained trade relations with the Han tribe for over a year, and as their chief, especially having considered joining the Han tribe, Yunji had naturally begun teaching himself the characters beforehand. However, lacking proper learning materials, his vocabulary was limited, mostly consisting of characters printed on various trade goods. Besides, this was a letter addressed to the chieftain. He wasn't authorized to read it first. Your brow furrowed slightly as you quickly scanned Ashu's letter. Then you spoke to Yunji. A mounted detachment from the Xin Tribe has arrived. Their leader is even a high elder. They claim they want to trade with our Han tribe, a large volume of trade. Dashu is unsure how to proceed, so he sent a letter asking for my decision. The Jiu Tribe? A mounted detachment, are they a grassland tribe? Are we on friendly terms? Yunji asked curiously. Having only just joined the Han tribe, he hadn't heard about the past conflict between the Han and Xin tribes, so his questions were natural. Not exactly friends, but not mortal enemies either, you explained. They aren't a grassland tribe, but their trade caravans are often active on the plains. This tribe's population is comparable to the Han tribes. They also know how to produce salt, smelt metal, cultivate fields, and raise livestock. They even have cavalry. Furthermore, they sell salt on the plains at a lower price than us, which led to a conflict between Yufu and them last time. Summer, our cavalry killed over 100 men from their trade caravan. The corn, soybeans, and those other new seeds we acquired, we seized them from the Xin tribe. You briefly outlined the relationship between the two tribes and the Xin tribe's situation for Yunji. Yunji winced inwardly upon hearing this. Killing over 100 men, and yet not considered mortal enemies? If that had happened to the Ling tribe back when their total population barely exceeded 1,000, losing over 100 adult males at once, would have taken 7 or 8 years to recover from, if ever. Despite this, the Xin tribe was still proactively seeking trade. No wonder the chieftain said their population was comparable to the Han tribes. They truly were numerous, if losing over 100 men wasn't a crippling blow. However, this Xin tribe seemed formidable in their own right. They possessed corn, something even the Han tribe lacked initially, new animal husbandry and metallurgy, and even had their own cavalry. Although perhaps not strong enough to defeat the Han tribe, compared to other tribes, their capabilities were truly impressive. Chieftain, if they already know how to do all that, what do they want to trade with us for? Yunji asked, still perplexed. No. While this tribe is populous, their technological level is nowhere near ours, you clarified. They don't know how to smelt iron, let alone steel. Without proper metal tools, think about what they can't do. They can't even build carts, let alone boats. That's why, since last year, they've wanted to buy carts from us. But Yufu refused at the time, leading to the fight where we killed their people and seized their goods. After your explanation, Yunji finally grasped the Xin tribe's true level of development. Without steel, they lacked proper metal tools. Unable to effectively work wood, they couldn't create anything substantial made from it. It's true, he thought. A single technology can truly change an era. So, Yunji asked, how do you plan to respond to them this time, chieftain? How should he reply to them? You hadn't decided yet, but an immature idea was already forming. Attempt to establish formal relations with the Xin tribe. If the Xin tribe could send envoys to the Han tribe, then the Han tribe could certainly send envoys to the Xin tribe. Understanding should be mutual. Figuring out the Xin tribe situation and establishing trade relations with them was a guaranteed win for the Han tribe, with no chance of loss. Even if war didn't break out, you were confident you could achieve practical control over them through economic means. The source of this confidence was, naturally, the currency issued by the Han tribe. This is a war without gunpowder, smoke, or bloodshed, you thought. I'll need to go over and see the situation before deciding how to respond, you said. Let's finalize the arrangements for the winery today, and I'll head over tomorrow. You can go tend to your own affairs for now. You dismissed Yunji and proceeded to jot down some juke recipes you'd casually concocted, along with ideas about temperature control, fermentation times, workshop construction, and other thoughts, hoping to provide the research team with some references and direction. You still had so many matters to manage. There was no time to focus solely on winemaking. The construction of the new commandery, settling the populace, promoting agriculture and animal husbandry, implementing governmental administrative structures and currency, and dealing with the Xin Tribe. Every single one required your personal attention. Being an emperor might just be the most exhausting job in the world, you lamented inwardly, repeating the same sentiment once again. Early the next morning, taking advantage of the relatively cool dawn, you mounted Grey Mountain and set off for Weishan Commandery with your personal guard contingent, arriving that afternoon. However, you didn't go to meet Niu Wei and his delegation immediately. Instead, you met with Da Shu first to ask his opinion. Chieftain, Da Shu began, I also believe we can trade with them. There's no need for our two tribes to keep fighting. It's not that I fear the Xin tribe, but continuous conflict benefits neither of us. Previously, Yu Fu attacked the Xin tribe first and seized many crop seeds. Honestly, I've never quite agreed with that action. Although his intentions were good, not wanting to sell vehicles to the Xin tribe for fear they'd learn the technology and catch up, and wanting them to cease their white salt trade on the plains to protect our tribe's interests. I still feel he was too impulsive. There should have been a better way to resolve it, allowing us to obtain those seeds without conflict, perhaps even profiting from the situation. Initiating war was likely the worst option. Da Shu spoke with great earnestness. Your thoughts align with mine, you replied. While Yu Fu's intentions were sound, his methods were indeed crude. Perhaps being stationed far from home, having encountered so many other tribes, he still felt our Han tribe was the strongest, and his ego got a bit inflated. He started thinking the Han tribe was invincible, unafraid of fighting anyone. In reality, warfare is never that simple. It consumes resources, money and grain, everywhere. Not only is the cost immense, but drafting large numbers of able-bodied men disrupts our own Han tribe's production, which is the greatest loss. Perhaps there was no better way before, but things are different now. We have money and the authority to issue currency. Even if our entire tribe focuses on production and avoids war, we can still exert economic control over the Xin tribe, simultaneously stimulating the development of the Han tribe's core territory. It's far more advantageous than fighting. The Xin tribe isn't like the cannibal tribe. They aren't madmen who need to be exterminated. Plus, they possess such a large population that represents a huge market. If we can establish trade, the Han tribe stands to make enormous profits. The only drawback is the distance, which affects the timing of trade between us. You shared your perspective as well. Exchanging views, both you and Da Shu agreed that maintaining trade relations was the way forward. However, achieving this would necessitate dispatching a delegation to the Xin tribe, stationing them within Xin territory to oversee and protect the interests of Han tribe merchants and facilitate communication with their leadership should issues arise. But this was merely the overt force. You also envisioned covert personnel, a detail you didn't voice, not out of distrust for Da Shu, but because the fewer people who knew, the better. The plan was to establish an intelligence agency, operating both internally and externally, to dispatch spies into the Xin tribe, infiltrating their ranks to coordinate with the official delegation, Jinwuwei, the embroidered uniform guard. It was a classic yet resonant name, belonging to one of history's most successful intelligence agencies. Many people didn't realize, you mused, that this organization did more than just tackle internal corruption. It also conducted infiltration and reconnaissance against foreign powers. Examples abounded. such as embedding agents within the Tatar tribes of the grasslands to provide military intelligence for the great Ming dynasty of the Central Plains. You wanted to create a similar organization but under a different name. You didn't have embroidered uniforms, but you did have armor, kaijia, so you decided to call it the Jinwuwei, the Golden Guard. Ostensibly, this would be a military group dedicated to protecting the Han tribe's chieftain, you. Their daily duties would involve ensuring your safety, forming your ceremonial escort when traveling, and guarding imperial precincts like the palace, though the palace guard duties could wait, as there was no palace yet. Covertly, however, it would be the Han tribe's primary official intelligence organization, likewise divided into internal and external branches. The internal branch would monitor officials at all levels, as well as influential clans and powerful figures, and even handle domestic counter-espionage. Externally, it would dispatch numerous undercover agents into various powers to gather all sorts of intelligence for the Han tribe. Good or bad, anything useful had to be collected. You had already chosen the first candidate for this agency. Yi, currently a minor foreman under Da Zui in the Hanyang City Ironworks. Yi was a young man, about 1.75 meters tall, not yet 20 years old. Only slightly older than yourself. Others might have forgotten him, but you hadn't. Yi was an outcast, a tribeless man driven from his people. He was one of the 100-odd outcasts the Jiu Tribe had rounded up back when they hadn't yet joined the Han tribe, seeking to trade them for an ox cart from you. At that time, Yi's arm had been dislocated for a long period. You personally had reset the bone and put it back in place. Otherwise, his arm would surely have been crippled. Because of this, Yi was fiercely loyal to you, never questioning your orders and doing whatever was asked. He was among the earliest participants in Hanyang City's construction. After his injury, healed, his intelligence and strength led you to assign him to the metallurgy workshop as a blacksmith. You chose him primarily because he had no background or connections within the Han tribe. Being a tribeless outcast, his background was impeccably clean, yet crucially, he was absolutely loyal to you. Secondly, he was intelligent and capable in combat. Being a blacksmith also helped. Becoming an artisan in the Han tribe generally required a degree of cleverness. You were confident he could manage these affairs and accomplish the tasks you assigned him. With the candidate and the organization conceived, the method of infiltration wasn't difficult either. Your plan was to gather the first batch of recruits and have them go to Weishan Commandery, disguised as external migrant workers. They would start interacting with the Xin Tribe delegation. Then, when Niu Wei's group departed, these agents would pretend to return to their own fictional tribes, but would actually arrange to be noticed by Niu Wei for their skills. He would ideally recruit them into the Xin Tribe as key technicians, ostensibly to improve the Xin Tribe's manufacturing capabilities. By revealing just a fraction of their technical knowledge, these agents could gain the trust of the Xin leadership and surely be entrusted with important positions. If more and more such undercover personnel could infiltrate, you were even confident you could eventually orchestrate a coup within the Xin Tribe, institute radical changes, eliminate the old power structure, and bring the entire Xin Tribe directly under your control. Of course, the prerequisite for this plan was that the operatives had to be your die-hard loyalists, or at the very least, loyal to the Han tribe. Otherwise, it would be incredibly awkward if, after eliminating the old Xin establishment, these agents defected and set themselves up as kings. The secret formation of the Jinwuwei, Golden Guard, proceeded smoothly under your direction. In this era, only the Han tribe possessed its own household registration system. Such a thing was utterly impossible for the Xin tribe. Therefore, fabricating identities was simple, with no fear that they could uncover any discrepancies. You didn't rush to meet Niu Wei and his group immediately. Dashu had already bought you buffer time for the meeting anyway. You used these few days to secretly summon Yi. You bestowed upon him a surname, Jin, derived directly from the Jinwuwei he would lead, and formally appointed him as the first commander of the Jinwuwei. This was currently the highest military rank in the Han tribe. Although he was still a commander without troops for the time being, Jinwuwei was incredibly moved. The chieftain had entrusted him with such a secret mission, one that even the commandery administrators weren't qualified to know about. He even had the authority to monitor and report on them. This signified absolute trust, making him part of the chieftain's inner circle. It was an immense show of faith from the leader. Regarding personnel recruitment, you listened closely to Jinwuwei's suggestions. He selected some familiar faces from Hanyang City and several surrounding county towns, mostly individuals who had arrived in the same group of outcasts as him, along with others you deemed capable and having clean backgrounds. In total, 60 men were gathered, though this wasn't the final number. After secretly assembling these men, you didn't reveal yourself initially. Instead, you had Jinwuwei meet with them. He didn't specify the task, only stating that the Lord Administrator had assigned a mission that might require being away for several years, unable to return home. It was dangerous and they might not come back at all. However, anyone who agreed to participate would immediately be granted a first-rank noble title, hereditary for 1 generation. No merit was required. Just participating granted the title, which could even be passed down to descendants upon death. Participants would also receive a salary, reportedly higher than the average wage, paid separately during the mission. If they had no way to spend it themselves, the money could be sent directly to their families. This compensation was exceptionally generous, but any astute person could discern that this was a life-risking job, not easily undertaken. For a moment, many hesitated. "Lord Jin," asked a young man in his 20s, "what exactly are we being sent to do? Why does it require such a long time?" "Well," Jinwuwei replied, "I'm not entirely clear myself right now. The higher-ups only said the duration is long because the journey is far. Just traveling there and back takes several months. Add the time needed to complete the task and it will be at least a year, with no guarantee of returning within that year. Lord Jin, will we still have our titles when we return? Will we still get paid?" Another man asked. "Your titles are for life, provided you don't break the law. If you commit a crime and have your title revoked, that's beyond my control. As for the money, as long as you continue with this work, the payments will continue." "Oh right, I forgot to mention something else," Jinwuwei added. "Even after the mission is completed, good arrangements will be made for you upon your return. You could be assigned respectable positions, leading to promotions and further ennoblement." Hearing this, various speculations arose among the men. The mission was long due to distance, dangerous, and potentially fatal. They might die out there and never return. Thinking along these lines, they began to deduce the nature of the mission. The Han tribe's greatest enemy, the cannibal tribe to the north. A journey taking months. Dangerous. It seemed to fit all the conditions. The mission must be about causing trouble for the cannibal tribe. They filled in the blanks themselves. In truth, Jinwuwei spoke this way under your specific instructions. Keeping them in the dark and deliberately feeding them vague, misleading information was intended to divert their attention. This way, even if those who were eventually eliminated from the selection process went back, they wouldn't expose the whereabouts of the remaining recruits. Of course, the promised benefits were entirely genuine. After much contemplation and weighing the pros and cons, 42 out of the 60 men decided to accept the mission. The rewards were simply too substantial. If they stayed home merely farming, they might never attain a first-rank title in their entire lives. Besides, Yu Yi had gone to the cannibal tribe's territory last year. Although one companion died and another was crippled during the journey, ultimately more survived than perished. Thus, the 18 men who opted out were dismissed. The remaining 42 set up a temporary camp in the mountains south of Weishan Commandery to await further orders. 2 days later, you personally went to meet this remaining group. Only then did they realize the orders hadn't come from some Lord Administrator, but from the chieftain himself. The mission's destination wasn't the north, but the Xin Tribe, far to the south. The duration was also longer than Jinwuwei had indicated. at least 3 years as a baseline. Furthermore, you reiterated that there were dangers, and death was a real possibility. But because you said it directly, the promised rewards and titles felt even more secure. I cannot tell you the specifics of what you'll be doing just yet, you stated. But the location, duration, dangers, and compensation have all been made clear. I am now giving you one final chance. Anyone unwilling to go can still withdraw now. However, for secrecy, those who withdraw now cannot return home either. I will arrange for them to work at the mint. They will not be permitted to leave for 5 years, but their wages will be paid as usual and can be sent to their families. The promised title, however, will be forfeited. Choose for yourselves. You waited for the men to process this, then posed the same question again. Hesitation flickered through the group once more. The title was certainly desirable, but they feared not living to enjoy it. There was still a chance to back out. Although the title would be lost, working at the mint was a plum job. Many coveted such a position and couldn't get in. Consequently, another dozen or so chose to withdraw this time, reducing the group of 42 down to 28. After dismissing those who withdrew, the remaining men could be considered resolute. At the very least, their desire for promotion and nobility was strong, and they were fearless young men, unafraid of death. After all, the danger had been emphasized twice, yet they chose to stay. If something happened later, they couldn't blame anyone else. The remaining 28 stood ramrod straight, seemingly aware they had become the chieftain's trusted agents. They would be working directly for the leader, a status incomparable to ordinary folk. You didn't keep them in suspense. You directly revealed the mission. They were to conceal their Han tribe identities and defect to the Xin Tribe under the guise of tribeless migrant workers. Their goal was to diligently climb the ranks to high positions, using their authority to provide the Han tribe with various kinds of information about the Xin Tribe, and potentially undertake even more critical tasks. After re-emphasizing the rewards, you also outlined their future prospects. This Jinwuwei of yours is a military force. Its tasks aren't limited to espionage and infiltration. When you return in the future, if you no longer wish to be spies, you can come to my side, be responsible for my safety, and serve as an Imperial Guard officer. The men were overjoyed upon hearing this. So that was the good position mentioned. It was indeed an excellent post. Although it was an army tasked with protecting the chieftain, what kind of fool would dare attack the chieftain? Did they have a death wish? In their view, the position of Imperial Guard officer meant following the chieftain around daily, handling tasks like clearing areas and standing guard duty. They would be working directly alongside the leader. Imagine the prestige that would bring in front of others. With this thought, the remaining men became even more determined, pledging their loyalty to you and vowing to resolutely complete the mission assigned by the chieftain. These men underwent a week of simple training at the temporary mountain camp. Besides basic physical conditioning and close-quarters combat, the main focus was on espionage techniques. You wrote the training outline, and Jinwuwei led them through it together, learning how to gather intelligence, transmit messages, use various methods to climb the ranks, and help each other sideline the established Xin Tribe elders. These were all necessary skills. After the week of intensive training, their performance began. Their first task was for Jinwuwei to lead them to Weishan Commandery to work as laborers. This was done without notifying the Weishan administration. No one there recognized them. Although they hadn't physically left Han territory yet, officially they were no longer members of the Han tribe. It was only on the 3rd day after these men started working that you, riding your elephant, slowly approached from the west, entering Weishan Commandery's administrator manor with great fanfare to formally receive Niu Wei and his delegation. By this time, exactly half a month had passed since Niu Wei first requested to see you. The timing perfectly matched what Da Shu had told him. Everything seemed harmonious, as if the Han tribe chieftain had indeed rushed over immediately upon receiving the news. The Weishan Commandery Administrator Manor wasn't a multi-story building, but it was quite imposing, boasting separate front and rear courtyards, a main hall, back chambers, and side rooms. The courtyards were paved with gray bricks, and a lotus pond sat in the middle. The plants transplanted from the Ling tribe, serving both aesthetic purposes and as a water reserve in case of fire. Niu Wei, accompanied by 5 attendants, followed, a minor official through the official administrative district. This district was enclosed within its own earthen walls, covering an area even larger than Hanyang City, a design incorporating lessons learned from previous urban planning issues. For now, however, few buildings stood within the walls. Only the Commandery Administrator Manor itself was complete, with other structures still under construction. Following the wide earthen road to the center of the enclosure, the impressive manor immediately came into view. Gray bricks and green, glazed tiles, pillars painted brown, a grand gate lacquered in vermilion, and a high-hanging plaque bearing the 3 large gold-painted characters for Luoyang Manor. Only there were no ceremonial drums or stone lions flanking the entrance. There hadn't yet been the time or energy to create such labor-intensive items. 4 guards clad in armor stood at the gate, holding long spears, their gazes fixed forward, deterring anyone from meeting their eyes. Niu Wei reacted just so, though he didn't dare look directly at their faces. He carefully observed their attire and weaponry, but the guiding official wouldn't wait for them. With a quick call, he continued onward. The chieftain was waiting inside. Niu Wei had no choice but to follow, glancing around as he walked. He couldn't help it. His curiosity about the Han tribe was immense. He took in the large buildings, the perfectly square bricks, the precisely vertical walls, the dazzling green glazed roof tiles, the complex yet aesthetically pleasing structure of the vermilion lacquered beams, and the lattice-filled doors and windows covered with translucent oiled paper. The entire construction exuded a sense of meticulous craftsmanship, a beauty born of skill, reflecting both the Han tribe's advanced architectural level and the diversity of their manufacturing techniques. Comparing this to the valley dwelling and bamboo lodge of his own Xin Tribe chieftain, Niu Wei instantly felt even more intimidated. There was simply no comparison. They weren't on the same level at all, and this was merely the office of a commandery administrator. He recalled hearing the Han tribe had several such commanderies. Following the official around the lotus pond, the main hall came into view. The doors were open, and as Niu Wei reached the entrance, he immediately saw you seated in the main position, holding a writing brush, sketching and writing something. Reporting to the chieftain, Elder Niu Wei of the Xin Tribe delegation has arrived, the minor official announced loudly from the doorway. Bring them in, you replied without looking up. The official quickly instructed Niu Wei and his attendants to remove their shoes outside the door before entering the main hall barefoot. The floor inside was laid with wooden planks, unwaxed but coated with varnish. The main seat was positioned on a raised platform directly opposite the entrance, furnished with a low writing desk. You were sitting cross-legged behind it. Others were seated differently. Several low tables lined both sides of the hall below the platform. Dezhu was currently kneel-sitting on your right-hand side. This arrangement was primarily due to considerations of status and etiquette. If everyone had chairs, having you seated above while others were at the same level wouldn't be appropriate. Yet making everyone stand would be inconvenient for discussions, tiring after a long time, and lacking a table for note-taking. Thus the solution was for everyone to kneel-sit, though you yourself preferred sitting cross-legged. Niu Wei entered the hall, walked to the center, and performed a single knee kneel, placing his right hand over his chest as a sign of respect. Greetings, Han Chieftain. I am Niu Wei, the elder responsible for external trade in the Xin Tribe. Under the command of our chieftain, I have come to present some gifts to the Han Tribe and to discuss matters of mutual trade between the Han and Xin. Niu Wei respectfully stated his purpose directly in the language of the grasslands. Naturally, you had a dedicated translator relaying his words in real time, ensuring smooth communication. You acknowledged. You are the trade elder. Does your Xin Tribe have other elders then? Yes. Niu Wei paused slightly, taken aback by the question, but answered honestly. The elders of our Xin Tribe each manage their own affairs, responsible for different matters. I have seen the gifts from your Xin Tribe, cattle and sheep. Not too many, not too little, you remarked casually, picking up a fresh sheet of paper, preparing to take notes later. Speak. What trade do you wish to conduct with our Han tribe? Hearing the translation, Niu Wei felt another jolt. What did not too many, not too little mean? However, since the Han tribe could trade directly with the Plains people, they truly wouldn't value this small amount of livestock. Besides these, the Xin tribe really had nothing else the Han tribe might desire. But, wait, perhaps they did have something else. Han chieftain. Those cattle and sheep are merely small tokens. We have another gift, one that must be presented personally to the Han chieftain. However, we did not bring it with us now. If there is no rush, I can have my subordinate retrieve it from our lodgings. You paused, intrigued. Did the Xin tribe possess some other specialty? Could it be more crop seeds? At this thought, your eyes narrowed slightly. Permission granted. Go fetch it. You may also take a seat over there. Yes, thank you, Han chieftain. Niu Wei quietly gave instructions to one of the men behind him. Once the attendant had left the hall, Niu Wei moved to a position below. Deishu and knelt down to sit. Someone serve Elder Niu sugar and tea. At your command, a black-clad minor official emerged from behind the screen wall behind you, carrying a tray. On it rested a tea bowl and a small dish of sugar. These were the latest products you were preparing for export. Offering them to Niu Wei was partly a sales tactic. He wanted to do business? Excellent. The Han tribe could use this opportunity. To earn some money, the official placed the items before Niu Wei and gave him brief instructions. This tea is for drinking. This sugar can be eaten, or you can put a couple of pieces in the tea bowl. Please help yourself. Niu Wei's curiosity was instantly piqued. Was this what the Han tribe chieftain used to entertain guests? He lifted the lid of the tea bowl. Steam curled gently upwards from the high mountain black tea within. The brew itself was a clear, golden-red hue, and the tea leaves drifted lazily at the bottom, quite fascinating to watch. It looked appetizing. He raised the bowl and took a sip. The taste was slightly unusual but not unpleasant, just rather hot, preventing him from drinking it satisfyingly. Niu Wei reluctantly set the tea bowl down. He recognized this type of painted ceramic bowl. He had once purchased a set from Plains people and brought it back to the Xin tribe. Since the tea was too hot to drink, Niu Wei turned his attention to the sugar dish. It was a wooden plate glossy with oil, likely peanut oil, and emitted a faint, clean fragrance. The shallow dish held several dozen rectangular, reddish, translucent hard candies, each about the size of a peanut. They had been produced by pouring boiled sugar water into molds. The first trial batch, not yet in mass production. Niu Wei was getting an early taste. He had never eaten such a thing before, nor even heard the name sugar. But surely the powerful Han chieftain wouldn't poison him right here in front of everyone. Reassured, he picked up a piece and tasted it. The moment it touched his tongue, an intense plant-derived sweetness exploded in his mouth, overwhelming his taste buds. What is this? This is sugar? It's sweeter than honey. No, the flavor is completely different. Honey was a sticky liquid, but this sugar was perfectly dry, yet possessed the same intense sweetness. The candies were all perfectly rectangular and identical in size, undoubtedly artificially manufactured. Realizing this, Niu Wei was further astonished by the Han tribe's manufacturing prowess. This substance, he thought, must surely be more precious than salt. Recalling the official's instructions, Niu Wei took another piece of the red sugar candy and dropped it into his tea bowl. With one candy dissolving in his mouth and another now in the tea, sipping it again revealed a different flavor profile, seemingly even more delicious. Red sugar paired with red, black tea. A perfect match. Many thanks for the chieftain's generosity, Niu Wei said sincerely. I wonder if during our trade this time, We might be able to purchase some of this. Sugar and tea to take back? Our chieftain would surely love these items. Certainly, you replied. There will be some included in the return gifts from the Han tribe, but not a large quantity. We have only recently started producing this sugar, and the tea as well. These aren't ordinary leaves. They must be the tender shoots of the tea plant, processed carefully, to become the black tea you are drinking. However, these details are secondary. Let us first discuss the other aspects of trade and the rules. Trading with our Han tribe is possible, but we have one condition. All transactions must use the Han tribe's units of measurement, and must use the Han tribe's currency. As for how to use these units and currency, if you agree, I can send people to teach you the methods, and we can also sell you various measuring instruments. Our scales. You tapped your finger lightly on the desk as you spoke. Hearing this, Niu Wei was instantly overjoyed. During their half-month stay in Han territory, although their movements were restricted, they had still observed many aspects of Han life, especially given the large population of Weishan Commandery. He had personally witnessed merchants in the Weishan morning market using scales to weigh goods, a remarkably convenient and precise method. Whether buyer or seller, disparate weights combined with various denominations of currency ensured fair transactions where no one lost out. Now presented with the opportunity to acquire such advanced technology, Niu Wei was naturally ecstatic, yet also slightly puzzled. What exactly did the Han chieftain mean? Was he truly being this generous? Of course, you had no intention of being purely generous, especially not when it came to business dealings with external tribes. But standardizing weights and measures, if it could be achieved worldwide, why wouldn't you pursue it? Besides, you weren't giving the scales away. They would pay. Why not sell them? This was clearly a beneficial arrangement, offering both immediate profit and long-term political advantage. If Han weights and measures could truly be adopted throughout the Xin Tribe, any future Han takeover would face less resistance. Additionally, there was the promotion of currency. This was more challenging, mainly due to production limitations, but it had to be pursued gradually. Just imagine, you thought, if the entire Bamboo Island started using the Han tribe's Luo Datu, Luo Big Head, coins for trade. Seeing the Yasi Ta portrait on the coins, learning the Han characters inscribed on them, how different would they then be from Han tribe people? Sooner or later, through various means, you could assimilate them,